Just as the two were about to talk, a thunderous crash shattered the silence. Old Mac looked outside and discovered a car accident had occurred right in front of his house. The next day, the victim's family held a memorial by the roadside. Curious, Mac looked up information about the deceased and found out it was a promising young football player. A wave of guilt washed over him, and he felt compelled to do something. To reduce accidents, Mac cut down the overgrown trees that were blocking the warning sign and spent the entire night in his yard, watching the dangerous curve. But this stretch of road was simply too treacherous. The warning sign was useless. Sure enough, another deafening crash. Mac watched helplessly as the hit-and-run driver sped away. He rushed to the other vehicle where the driver was severely injured and barely conscious. Just then, the driver's phone rang. It was a call from family. As Mac hesitated whether to answer, police cars suddenly arrived. Inexplicably, he slipped the phone into his own pocket. Later, Mac confessed his guilt to his wife, but she was concerned about something else entirely. No wonder their son complained about a strange smell. His wife wanted to move, but Mac's mind was now consumed by the dead driver. He secretly researched the driver's background and even lied to the man's daughter, claiming to be her father's teammate. Overwhelming guilt drove Mac to enroll in first aid courses and secretly purchase a CPR dummy to practice at home. Like a man possessed, he stationed himself by the window, monitoring traffic conditions and waiting for the next opportunity. However, no matter how long Mac waited, no accidents occurred. But ironically, just as he was driving home with his son, the moment he'd been anticipating finally happened. An ambulance raced past. Sure enough, another accident had occurred at his doorstep. A car was burned to scrap metal, and the driver was being carried out. Mac stared intently at the paramedics performing CPR, screaming internally. A reporter approached him for an interview, and only then did he remember his son was still in the car. But when he reached the vehicle, his son was gone. The child had run to the accident scene, and his wife completely broke down. She demanded that Mac see a therapist, but Mac didn't think he'd done anything wrong. Instead, he blamed his wife for enrolling their son in taekwondo classes. If he hadn't needed to pick up the child, he could have been first on the scene to save lives. Because he was constantly preoccupied with car accidents, Mac got fired from his job, though he didn't dare tell his wife. But when his wife insisted on selling the house, he didn't dare object either. He just hoped an accident would happen soon to prove his usefulness. That night, Mac discovered his son had recreated the accident scene with building blocks. The little figure in white represented his son in his taekwondo uniform, but Mac chose to ignore it. To create an accident, Mac actually pushed a garbage can into the middle of the road. After waiting all night with nothing happening, he reluctantly dragged it back. He began pretending to go to work while actually staying home, frantically practicing CPR. But his wife eventually discovered that Mac had been fired. Completely devastated, she took their son and moved in with a friend. After lawyers got involved, Mac was granted only 2 hours of visitation per week. To salvage his family, he was forced to sell the house. But on his last night before moving, he conceived the idea of deliberately causing an accident. He intentionally sawed down the warning sign, used a water gun to wet the curve, and turned off all the lights. He even prepared tools and waited for a crash to occur. Finally, the accident happened just as he'd planned. Mac excitedly rushed out, trying to pry open the car door, but his axe broke. A school bus happened to pass by, and students recorded the entire incident on their phones. Mac cut through the seatbelt, dragged the unconscious driver out, and began the CPR he'd been dreaming of performing. But no matter how hard he tried to resuscitate her, the woman showed no response. In that moment, Mac finally realized how terribly wrong he'd been. In his desperate attempt to prove his worth, he had caused the death of an innocent life.